Hello students, in previous video we have seen how we can use SQLite database in our Android application and how we can read or update, delete and insert operations we can do on SQLite database, which is local database, means values or data stored in our phone's memory, local database. Okay, also we can doing the functionality for finding a particular record. Now in this video we see how we can fetch a data from the remote server. Means our data is not stored on our local memory, but we are fetching our data, app data, from a remote server. Means server database we are fetching in this video. But before fetching the server data, you need to understand what is meant by web API. So here is our phone application. On our phone we can access our mobile application, and if here is our server, and on this server there is one database. Okay, so this is our database. In mobile application, if we want to fetch the data from the remote server, there is no any direct communication between our app and the database, remote database, but we can communicate with this remote data with the help of API, web API. Okay, so this is the DB and this is the web API. So we can't do this functionality. Okay, we can't communicate directly with the remote server, but by using web API we can communicate with this remote server. So what is the functionality? Our app communicate with this web API. This web API fetches the data from remote server, and then this web API sends the data to our mobile application. Like same way, if we want to store the data from our application to remote server, then also our application sends data to this web API. Then this web API stores this data to remote server and then give response to a particular response, give to mobile app. So in this way, with the help of web API in the sense application programming interface. So with the help of web API, we can communicate between our mobile application and remote server database. So these web API created by the web developer. Web developer can create web APIs in any server-side scripting language like PHP is there, Java is there, or ASP.NET. We can develop or create web API in any language, and then we can use that particular web API to send the data to remote server from our mobile application, and fetch data from remote server and display in our mobile application. So here with the help of web API we can communicate with the remote server. But before accessing the remote server data, we need to get the permission to access the network. We get some permission, first get permission, and then we can communicate with the remote server. Now what is that web API? I will give one example how response comes from the web API. The response comes from the web API in the XML format or in JSON format. JSON is JSON format. We get the response in JSON format. JSON means JavaScript object notation. We receive one JavaScript object, or maybe the array of JavaScript object. Okay, JSON object we may get, or maybe array of object, JSON object array we may receive, and then we display accordingly the information from that particular JSON array on our mobile screen. Also similarly, we send the data to our web API. Inside that we need to send the data in JSON format, and then that web API store that JSON object data into our remote server database. So how response comes in XML or JSON format, we see inside the fiddler or postman you can use to see how the response comes from the web API. So this is the fiddler everywhere window, and I'm giving one URL here, like this URL. We can use. Okay, here we give the URL as http 13.235.250.119 v1 book page books, and here we need to give one token as so here we are passing this token, and then if we execute this get request, there are multiple methods get request. If we want to fetch the data from the server, then we may use this URL, and with the help of get method. Then if we want to post data to the server, means if we want to store or send data to the web server or web API, then we may use post method. Then there are some multiple methods. Put is there, delete is there. Means if we want to delete one record from the database, then we may use the delete method. Then put method we may use for updating the data. So in this way we may use the various methods and this URL. Now see the response comes here. This is the response which is in JSON format. Data is, we are fetching book data, so success value is true. If data fetched from the server is if there is any failure occurs, then success value will be false. Then data is our data comes from the server in JSON format, and there is JSON array, JSON object array. See here in this data there is one array, and this is one JSON object, then this is another JSON object, then this is the third object. Likewise there is array, this array ends here, square bracket ends here. So these many JSON objects are returned, or we are getting from this URL. Inside JSON there are key value pairs. This ID is key and its value is 1. Book ID is the key and its value is 101. ID key is name and its value is. So JSON format is key value pair. Okay, if we go towards the XML format, then we get this XML response. You may access the response in XML format or JSON format. But JSON is simple to understand because it is a key value pair, and we can access the values by using keys. Okay, so sometimes we get sometimes we get the one book or only single record, then there is only one JSON object. If multiple records we are fetching, then then a response comes from the server as JSON object array. So if I use the ID as 1, and okay, there is no one such response. Here I have created one web API inside .NET, ASP.NET. So this is my code, and if we run this code on browser, then we can get the response as I have created one database inside SQL Server, and I have created one table named book, and inside book I have stored ID, author, image, URL, price and title. So this response we get in XML format. Here we get the response on browser window. So this .NET application I have created on the same machine and executing that particular application. So we see here localhost, because this machine acts as a server and this same machine acts as a client. I am not hosting that application, okay, where I have created web API. That project or that application, web application, I have not hosted. So we get the URL as localhost, whereas in Fiddler we see the domain here, or a web address, or what we say, address, total server address. Okay, we see here if someone gives the domain specific name, domain name, then we need to give the domain name here, and after that we get a particular page. Okay, so here I have created one web API where book database I have created, and inside that book database one book table is there, and here we are fetching all the book information in XML format. If I am giving the 4 ID, book ID, so only that particular ID's book I am retrieved, or I fetch only that particular ID's book. So here we are adding where clause for the ID column, where ID is equal to 4, that particular book I want to fetch. So in this way you can fetch the data with the help of web API from the remote server. Like same way we are using this web API concept inside our Android project to fetch the data from the remote server. We use this URL and get this data in JSON format and display on screen. So such functionality we are doing in next video. In this video we are learning about web API and how we can access the remote database with the help of web API, and what is mean by web API. This is the intermediate part which communicates remote database server and mobile application. Okay, it acts as the intermediate or intermediary between the remote database server and mobile application. So see you in next video to learn how to fetch data from web server or remote database server with the help of web API, and display that JSON object array response in on our Android page, or we can say that activity. So see you in that video. Thank you.